Hey there. Since we're at the top of a season, I want to remind everybody that the show really only grows because of word of mouth. If you can tell a friend about the show or tweet about it or go and post about it on message board or social media, that does make a noticeable difference for us. So yeah, please help spread the word as we get started with The Wind Through the Keyhole. Welcome to Radio Free Midworld, a podcast about the Dark Tower series of books by Stephen King. I'm Cole Ross, and I'm your host, and today I'm joined by Evan Thorne. Hey, Evan.
Hey, Cole. Just you and me again.
Yeah, here to talk about a really fun and good book.
Oh, I'm so excited.
I know I say this about every single one of them. Like, there's something to love about all of these, but wow, is The Wind Through the Keyhole just this easy, breezy, wonderful, cool thing.
Yeah. I've mentioned this several times before on this show, but this is the first time that I've read this. And I've only read up through the section that we are covering tonight.
Oh, God. So I left you like right on the precipice of something really cool.
Yeah, no, I that was very intentional. Like, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I am so ridiculously excited. And I started reading, and this is exactly what I wanted it to be.
Nice. Yeah. So that's cool. I'm very happy that you're in a situation where you were saving yourself. You're saving dessert, right?
Pretty much, yeah. And I just, I've wanted to read this since it came out, and for various reasons, I just didn't get around to it. And then once this show kind of started to take shape, I deliberately put it off, and so now finally getting to read it, it's I feel like patience is a virtue that I should maybe practice more.
Well, this is a good way to practice it. I dragged my feet about this too, just because it came out so long after the series had concluded. I was really iffy about the idea of him just kind of like just wedging this in between two books that I already know and love. Like, just everything about it seemed like a gamble that shouldn't have paid off. So
that initially was definitely part of why I hesitated.
Yeah. Because like, oh gosh, is this going to be something that like retroactively makes something that I like a lot cheaper, right?
Yeah, and I was worried about that, and it took a while before enough of my friends who I trust read it.
Yep. And
told me that was not the case.
Same thing. The guys on Video Games Hot Dog started gushing about it, and I was like, all right, I trust this now.
Yeah. No, my good friend Andy Wislotsky, who I tell constantly to listen to this fucking show, and I doubt that he is. Yeah. He read this and he told me that it was good. And once he said that it was good and worth reading, that was when I got comfortable with the idea of reading it. And then it took me
several years,
5-6 years to get around to it.
So let's talk a little bit about what would have made us nervous. So this came out in 2012, after, book 7 came out in 2004, very finally ending the series. And it didn't really start out as a Dark Tower book. So structurally, this is a story within a story within a story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which I am all about.
Yeah. And like I'm a total sucker for nonlinear storytelling, mm-hmm. and Stephen King does it better than most and not nearly often enough. Right. Yeah. I forget the point that I was going to make about that. No, it's, some reviews that I read kind of highlighted something that I think really, really rings true. Like the way in which this story or this book is meta, and the way, elements from one story will kind of like play into, stuff one level up, and just kind mm-hmm. of in general, the glee that it takes in being kind of all about the transportative power of story is a really good kind of like primer or reset almost, taking you into Wolves of the Kala and the back trilogy of the book, which is kind of which leans very heavily into those kinds of elements.
am very, very like I'm only like a third of the way through this book, and I haven't read or I haven't gotten to Wolves of the Cala for this read through of the series. But I was thinking about that also. Like, this seems like such a logical transition.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot going on.
and like, I'm totally fine being thrown in. I'm totally fine being thrown into the deep end with Wolves of the Cala. And I think that even that, like, it takes a while within that book to ramp you up.
Yeah, but it does kind of like, Wolves of the Cala is a, without giving anything away, it's kind of an abrupt change of tone.
Very much so.
And it definitely sets the tone for the back half of the series. But so far, from what I can tell, this is a very, very good transition piece to kind of make that shift less jarring.
Yes. So, I didn't read the entire series too long before this came out. But anybody who is following along with the show, or anybody who is picking up the series after 2012 when this came out, like, I have no reservations about saying this fits in between. Like, yeah, just go right from 4 into this and then into 5.
Yeah, like, I feel like this should be retconned into the continuity of the series. Like, this, yeah. This is book 5.
Yeah. Stephen King has come out and said that. Yeah, this is like book 4.5. Like, I tried to write it so people who aren't familiar with the Dark Tower can read it. I think that's mostly true.
If I didn't know the characters, I would have a very hard time giving a shit.
The stuff with Eddie and Susanna, like all the present day stuff, would be very difficult. Once stuff starts getting rolling with the mystery level of it, like the werewolf story, then I think that's when you're cooking with gas. Right?
Yeah, yes, but I feel like it would be. I don't know if I would have the patience to even get there if I didn't know the characters.
To get through those 30 pages of some people that you don't give a shit about, yeah.
Yeah, and like the weird like fairy guy who gives them sandwiches, like fucking I wouldn't care if I didn't already care.
Right.
And it's great. I love it. Like, it's so good. And I'm, as a fan of the series, I absolutely love the way it's set up and the way that it's
like
presented.
The caveat being, you wouldn't care if you didn't care. However, you care quite a bit.
Yeah. But and even once we get into the story, the mystery, and presumably the story within a story within a story, it's good. I don't know if I would find it that impressive if I didn't know Roland.
Yeah.
And that's something that I want to talk about as we get kind of deeper into it, is just like the additional dimensions this brings to Roland, which I think is very, very interesting and fits so much better than it should.
Yeah. So I guess let's put that to the audience. If you are somebody who started with the Wind Through the Keyhole, write into us. There's the contact form on the webpage, or if you know somebody who did that. I'm just curious. Like, I don't know that. There's no point that I need proven or anything. I just want to know if that's a use case that has been kicked around outside of Stephen King's foreword and then our discussion about it.
Yeah. No, I am equally curious if that has been your experience. Please let me know how it is. Let us know. I honestly can't imagine what it would be like, just because I've been reading these books for so long.
They've been, So the three levels of the narrative here, it starts out, the framing story is Roland and the present day ka-tet, proceeding on after the Emerald Palace, in Wizard and Glass. They haven't gotten to Caliban Sturgis yet. The second level is kind of a flashback or a story of young Roland, who's kind of sent on a mission. Basically, it's him and his buddy Jamie going off and being witchers in a mining town.
Which is awesome.
Sign me up.
It is every bit as cool as it sounds.
Yep.
But yeah, it takes place after the Wizard and Glass flashback.
Right.
So it's the events that transpired in what did we decide on pronunciation? Magus?
Yeah.
Magus. Cool. Neither of mine. Those have already happened, and those are already influencing Roland within this story.
Right.
And now that I actually think about it, like I could almost see how people might have like flashback fatigue going from, if you've never read these books, going from Wizard and Glass straight to this.
Yeah, they're going to a place called Thunderclap. I want to go to Thunderclap. Thunderclap sounds cool.
That always just reminds me of Thundercleese, the neighbor from the Brack show.
3 hams will certainly kill him.
3 hams will fill him.
3 hams will thrill him. God, I love the Brack show. I recently did a rewatch of all the Brack show. It is so good.
So good.
The dad.
Oh my God.
Oh God. The tiny.
Yes,
tiny...
mother. What do you think of my new slacks?
Yeah.
I feel like the dad should be offensive, but I don't know to whom.
I mean, he's just tiny Ricky Ricardo is what he is.
Basically, but like it's tiny Ricky Ricardo, but more of a stereotype, and I feel like someone should be offended by it, but I honestly, gun to my head, could not tell you who could possibly be offended by it. Yeah. Which is the perfect kind of caricature.
It's so far away from reality.
Yeah.
No,
this has been Brackcast.
Yep. The Brack show holds up for sure, and this is like the 15th time 3 hams has come up in the past week. It's a real when it rains it pours kind of thing.
Yeah, this is probably the 15th time 3 hams has come up in my life in 2018.
Yeah,
like
it's time is due.
Yeah, if you don't know what we're talking about, that's on you.
Just go on YouTube
and correct that.
Just go on YouTube and do a search for 3 hams will kill him. It's like a little 30-second bit.
It's one of the greatest things that humanity has ever created.
Yeah. But flashback fatigue, anyway, that you are kind of like, in a lot of ways, this picks up, the majority of this book picks up right after the end of the flashback, which already had its own kind of pacing problems in the original kind of continuity or run of the series, right?
Yeah. And I guess, again, if your experience with these books is following along with this podcast, like, I mean, that's awesome. I know there's a number of people for whom that's the case, and that's really, really cool. And I'm super excited to be a part of your experience of these books. Like, that's amazing. But please, please, please let us know kind of your take on how 2 flashback books in a row hits you.
How it sits with you. Yeah.
Because for me, I love it, but I'm coming at this from a like very different perspective than someone who is reading through it for the first time.
Yeah. And for me, I was already pretty on board with young Roland in the original telling, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So the third level, the innermost one, is when Roland is telling a fairy tale. He's telling a story that his mom used to tell him, trying to keep somebody entertained, keep them company.
Yeah, and I haven't read. I've gotten to the part where that starts, and I quit because I'm
because you wanted to come in here not having that on your mind.
Yeah, I'm saving myself for the real thing.
Eye of the tiger, and also body of the tiger. And then the body of the bear, the body of it'll cycle through.
Yeah, and also Eye of the Dragon, if you will.
Oh yeah, I wonder if our Skin Man has that in his repertoire. He can be a big lizard man.
That's true.
So that innermost one,
we should probably stop referring to a Skin Man until we get to what that is, because it does sound vaguely obscene out of context.
It's fine. It's a very good name for a shapeshifter, like a werewolf.
Yeah. Oh no, I really like it. It's like it feels less hokey to me than like Skinwalker or whatever. Yeah. But the first time that I saw it, the only thought in my brain was Celery Man.
Oh yeah. Give me a printout of Oyster Smiling. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Took me a second. I don't know why it took me so long, because normally that is as top of mind as 3 hams.
I'm honestly a little bit disappointed.
There was like too much room has been taken up by steamed hams and 3 hams. Like it's real strange days.
Hams all the way down.
Yep. no room for celery, man. So
anyway,
this fairy tale that's kind of
enough weird internet references. Let's keep going with our fucking Dorko fantasy book.
Let's do it. So that
this is two white dudes with beards talk about fantasy. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's get back to it.
That innermost story was kind of the beginning of this. King had just kind of started writing it and said, hey, this could be part of like a collection. Let's do like 3, fairy tale novella kind of things. And that eventually turned into a Midworld story right around the same time that he was planning out the story for Dr. Sleep, the sequel to The Shining that I am listening to right now. That shouldn't work, but does.
I also have not read that yet, but I definitely want to.
Yeah.
Because I remember I remember when he put out the online poll to see what people were more interested in, and I was flabbergasted that a sequel to The Shining beat out another Dark Tower volume.
Yeah, just barely though. So we did put up a poll saying like, hey, I've got these 2 ideas for revisiting these different things. And I think that Dr. Sleep won, and he was going to write them both eventually, but it was which one should I do first? Dr. Sleep won by like 40 votes or something like that.
It was a slim margin, but I fully anticipated another Dark Tower book to just steamroll it. Like,
yeah,
I had absolutely no doubt in my mind that it would be like no contest.
Yeah.
And then when Dr. Sleep won by whatever margin, it was kind of surprising.
It's easier to imagine another story in Midworld than it is to look at the end of The Shining and say, there's more here.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Because there's so much in Midworld.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of a universal feeling among people who have read and enjoyed the Dark Tower books is wanting more of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, yes, give us more. Give us another one, please.
Yeah. Dr. Sleep could take a shit. I'm about halfway through it right now. And, Stephen King books, the back halves are kind of iffy. But so far I'm enjoying it. Yeah.
I've heard it's good. I've heard it's like, it doesn't take a shit in the back half. It isn't one that I hear people talk about very much, but it's good.
Yeah. So we're going to cover this. We're going to cover the Wind Through the Keyhole in 4 episodes. It is a shorter book than the other Dark Tower books. I think that it's about the same length as like the Gunslinger is.
But Song of Susanna.
Yeah. But it's kind of the structure makes it weird to like to bunch it all up. Like we can't do all of the fairy tale in one episode because there's just kind of too much there.
Yeah. And like I sent you an email yesterday, I think, just like making sure where we were cutting it for today, because it felt like not quite enough to stop where I did, but I also didn't have any sense of how long the fairy tale was going to go on for, so I wasn't sure.
It's the bulk of the book.
Yeah, and I kind of figured it might be, but I also could see if it wasn't, and the like Midworld Witcher stuff was the meat of it. And it's the structure is very interesting so far, and I think that breaking this up into more episodes rather than less is the way to go.
Yeah,
especially with its status as like a late addition to the series.
Yes. And it is relatively kind of like detail packed. There's a lot kind of packed into it, which is
definitely,
which runs counter to the idea that this is a really breezy read. I think it's probably the breeziest of them in the series, honestly. Like that's like even more so than Gunslinger.
Yeah, I'd say that this and Gunslinger are about on par. At least the original version of the Gunslinger before it was revised to fit with the Dark Tower,
right?
Which is the version that I initially read. That's a pretty quick, breezy standalone novel.
Yeah.
But yeah, this definitely does have a lot of detail, and if you're into sitting down and picking this apart to the nth degree, which we very much are.
Yeah.
It's great for that. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. Starting with the chapter called Starkblast.
Which this came out before the Game of Thrones TV series, but after the book Game of Thrones and the rest of A Song of Ice and Fire. And so I love those books too, and I could do an entire podcast all by myself just fucking talking about those books, even though no one would listen, and rightly so. But Starkblast just makes me think of
old Nettie.
Ned Stark in the North, like, and weirdly, I don't know if Stephen King read those books and this was either a conscious or unconscious homage to that, but either way, it fits really fucking well once you learn what a Starkblast is.
Yeah, it is a very apt description for this kind of horribly scary weather phenomenon that happens in Midworld.
Yeah, it's basically a Midwest winter.
But it happens like really, really suddenly.
Yeah, an entire Midwest winter condensed into like 48 hours.
Right. It's like well, what if boom, it was suddenly February in the beginning, like in an early afternoon.
Yeah, but the entire month of February.
Yeah, just kind of packed in
all at once.
So this opens up really uneventfully, just kind of like easing us back into the characters, not really doing an awful lot of note, but like giving you the idea that like, oh, Eddie's a jokester. Jake is a young as a young kid, and they're talking about like, oh, not every kid comes back from the dead. Just kind of saying like, okay, we're just going to feel this out because here we are with our ka-tet again.
Yeah, and like they pretty much just got out of the Wizard and Glass situation.
Yeah,
like it establishes right away that like this is not long after the events of that book at all.
Right.
And so they're kind of just keep on keeping on. Not like nothing remarkable has happened. It's like just another day. They're just on the road, and you kind of get a sense, a little bit of a sense of like the day-to-day with the group, which is very, very cool if you've been invested in the characters up to this point.
Right. If you are like me and you just want to spend you want to spend as much time as possible with this group of people.
Yeah. If like me, and I'm going to assume Cole, you just wish that these people were your best friends.
Yeah. And you were just kind of hanging out.
Yeah.
Doing stuff like in my fan fiction.
Except for when it gets dangerous, at which point you're glad it's a book.
Right. And then it gets scary. Then you can.
But this is the part where it's not scary, and you're just like, yeah, it'd be cool to hang out.
It's just buddies on the road.
Yeah, come on, guys. But yeah, it's interesting because they have Jake is not with the group initially, and he's like up ahead alone, and Eddie and Susanna are initially kind of concerned about him because he's an 11-year-old boy, and that's a good person to be concerned about.
Yeah, but Roland says, hey, he's got his gun, and also Oya's with him, and Oya has a really good sense for if there are bad people around.
Yeah, and Roland, I forget what the exact line is, but Roland basically says, like, if anybody crosses Jake, they're the ones that are likely to be sorry.
Yeah.
Which, like, fuck yeah.
Yeah, Jake's badass. They all are.
Yeah,
like they
absolutely, and like that, it's just so casual, and it's a throwaway line, and it's just like, yeah, great.
But yeah, he's up there. Roland has been noticing Oya acting kind of strange. However, like he's frequently like sniffing the air and looking in their back trail, looking to the northwest, and he's getting kind of these inklings of the story from his youth as they roll up to Jake, who has made a new friend.
Weird old dude named Bix.
Yep.
Who immediately seems like he's up to something, but as far as I can tell, is actually just kind of a sweet guy.
Yeah, he's just a sweetheart. Like he's the ferryman. He takes...
I kept looking for hints or clues that he was up to no good, and I got nothing. Like he's like Stephen King so rarely gives us just a sweet a sweet old man.
Right, with no ulterior motive. I mean, even in this series, it's kind of a problem. But no, Bix is solid. Like he lives alone. Like most everybody who would have used his services, they're all dead. There's no reason to cross the river, but he just kind of like lives out his days fishing and waiting for travelers along the road. To get to the River Why. And of course, we get Eddie in proper dad joke form saying, "You say River Why, I say River Why not?" For no reason, and also kind of not a joke.
Yeah. No context. It's a punchline without a setup.
Yep.
Which is, I have a 3-year-old, and I've gotten almost daily more appreciative of the art of the dad joke, and Eddie Dean,
he nails it.
Masterful.
Yeah. Bix wonders, like, hey, are you going to the Callus? They're pretty much right across the river here, or are you going far beyond to I think he calls it like the Big Dark or something like that.
Yeah.
And he's just completely blown away that there are gunslingers here, and he thinks they're crazy for not just wanting to settle down and eat some rice.
Yeah. Well, they want to eat some popkins.
Yeah,
that's what it is,
and he obliges. He gives them some fish burritos.
Comes out with a basket of them.
Yeah, like, hey, what up? Plenty to share. Although none of them are muties. Like there's more threaded than muties, and things have gotten things are so far gone that even the ethos of like, oh, take all of the muties and throw them up onto the hill so they die and don't breed, like he's given that up. Like he's more than 120 years old, and he has decided to live and let live.
I can respect that decision making.
This isn't hurting anything so far as I can tell. So why doesn't Billy the Bass just let him live? Yeah, love singing that song, Billy Bass. I didn't realize what I said until I said it.
Yeah, I don't know how you didn't realize it, because that's literally the only Bass reference that I think exists.
Somebody, I think it was Jala, sent me a link to somebody who had modified their Billy Bass to be an Amazon Echo.
Yes. Oh, yes.
So when they spoke, it was like, hey, blank, what's the weather? It would turn its head and say, currently it is.
If I didn't send this to you, it's because I forgot, but my girlfriend sent me I think it was called Furlexa, which is somebody who took apart a Furby and made it into an Echo Dot.
Oh no! Did he leave the skin on or leave it off?
Well, they had to take it off to make it.
And
then you can put it back or not.
Yeah,
and a Furby without the fur.
It's one of those classic like cursed images of the internet.
It is some straight up Dark Tower shit, actually.
Yeah, it's coming for you. It's not going to stop.
I feel like they would be. We're not really there yet, but they would be allies of Mordred.
Yeah, he just has a whole little swarm of them.
Yeah,
just carries them behind him on a wagon.
Yeah, cool. I'm not going to sleep tonight, so.
Oh, Fuzzy. Yeah, no, I had a Furby. We all had Furbies. None of us asked for them. We just woke up and they were there.
Yeah, I don't know anybody who was excited to have a Furby.
I think it was one of those things like a Cabbage Patch Kid that parents got into a frenzy about because they were rare, because parents were getting into a frenzy about them. And so, like, God damn it, you're going to get a Furby, whether you want one or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Bix, like we said, he's a ferryman, and he tells a story about going to get his motor, which is powered by a crank, the motor for his raft. It has North Central Positronics stamped on it.
Because of course it does.
Oh, because of course. And he got it from a gigantic cave that was full of strange music, that was full of this stuff.
I can only assume that the strange music was Velcro Fly.
Yeah, but it was like the bass line, not the drums.
Yeah,
like just
exactly. Yeah,
all of the stems from this track have just been spread to all the corners of Midworld.
Yes, like any time that there's strange music, I just assume that it's something from Velcro Fly.
Yeah,
and I love it. I love that. That is
the bong rattling bass.
the fact that it's never addressed or confirmed, but there's enough, there's just enough to give you reason to think it might be the case. Like, that's one of my favorite things about the entire series, is that any reference to strange music, it's like, oh, it's ZZ Top.
Yeah, why not? Like, just somebody. I don't know what album this was on, but let's just say like Eliminator.
Oh, nobody does. ZZ Top doesn't know anymore.
Yeah, they just know that. Oh, that song that all those nerds might remember from that book. One of my favorite character beats are on that. We talked about it when it happened, but just how insulted Eddie Dean is that people are killing themselves over a track that wasn't even a single.
Well, it was. I think was a single, because there is a music video, and we talked about this.
Yeah, we did.
There's a very, very special music video, and I'm still waiting on those Dirt Boys to give us a crossover.
Yeah, they should. We should remind them of that. Yeah, fourth single. There we go. Okay, Eddie was just mistaken about it.
Yeah, well, it wasn't like a charting single. Like, it didn't do well. Like,
yeah, it's from Afterburner.
Sure.
Yeah, and that is certainly an album.
Yeah. Like, it was a single because there was a music video, but it didn't do well enough to make it on ZZ Top's greatest hits, which I definitely checked out from the library when I was a teen.
Oh, of course, because when you're a teen, that is the only time for ZZ Top.
Mm-hmm.
Which in
correct.
England they call ZZ Top.
I hope that's true.
I don't think it is.
I don't think it is. If you're Patty, please write in and let us know.
Also, if you're Patty, come back on the show.
Also, we missed you.
It's been a little bit. I need to reach out to him and see. There wasn't like a big thing. He just didn't sign up for episodes. Yeah. But yeah, like he went to get this. He went to get this, and through the process was exposed to enough radiation that his teeth fell out. Mm-hmm. Not Patty. I'm talking about Bix now.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
Woo. Yeah. So Bix asked about Lud, saying like, yeah, I used to get some travelers from Lud. How are they doing? It was a wondrous city.
How are they doing? Bad. Real bad.
Yeah.
Very, very bad. It's a bad situation.
It's not enough that like that Eddie says, oh yeah, they're dust in the wind, and then somebody else chimes in and says, well, more like glowing ash. Yeah. Well, it was to every season turn. Lud was going to go down anyway.
The subject does change a little bit abruptly.
A little bit, because Bix is like, hey, you probably noticed that your Billy Bumpler's losing his shit.
Yeah, and he has some insight, which is that if it wasn't for me pointing this out, you guys would be fucked.
Yeah.
There's a perfect storm coming.
Yeah.
Basically.
Starkblast coming, and you have to find once you get across there, you're gonna have to find some shelter.
Yeah. And he refers to a Starkblast, and Roland obviously knows exactly what he's talking about, right. And nobody else does.
He's just forgotten about it. Like, oh God, how could I have been so dumb? This is literally the only reason that Billy Bumblers exist. Or Throcken. Throcken is the name that they call them by.
Yeah, that's like the older, more formal name, which I'm glad that exists.
Because Billy Bumbler is kind of a goofy, like Billy Bumbler sounds more authentically Midworld to me, because it's just goofy. And
absolutely. But Throcken seems very Gilead.
Yes, this is true. Seems very old speech.
Yeah. But yeah, you kind of get the feeling that a Starkblast is something that, like, it doesn't really come around. It's not really a thing that most people think about or worry about, but there are stories about them, and Roland knows the stories. And so I didn't have the sense that Roland had lived through one.
I think he described like being near them. Like he said he has heard them in places nearby, like when it's happened. He's
been aware of them happening, but Roland, for all he's done up to this point, hasn't experienced one.
Yeah, it just hasn't been top of mind. Like, it wasn't the first thing that he thought of when an animal it starts acting weird.
Yeah, they're not overly common.
Yeah.
But they are bad.
Yeah. But bad enough that, like, taking shelter from one is the entire setup for the rest of this novel, right?
Yes.
Like, you know, Bix says, hey, there's a town hall. It's made of stone. You can probably hold up there. Just take the pieces of the houses and burn those for warmth because you're going to need it. Also, you know, once you get down the road, if you see that goddamn Andy, tell him I don't want no songs and I don't want my goddamn horoscope read. So this, if you're, you know, without context, you think, wait a minute, who the fuck is Andy? And Roland and everybody else says, well, wait a minute, who is Andy? Trust me, we're going to get to know Andy.
Yeah. Although, I almost wish we didn't.
That it was just that it was just left dangling.
Total non sequitur. Like it is a beautiful and brilliant piece of fan service, and foreshadowing.
Right.
But oh my God, I really wish that there was not a character named Andy in this entire series. And it was just like, if you see that fucking Andy, tell him I don't want any. Like, what?
Now, if you see Sneaky Pete, tell him I still want my boogie board back. What are you talking about, old man?
Oh, like that was my entire thought. Like I got to that and I was like, oh, that's really cool. I wish it wasn't. I really genuinely wish it wasn't. That would be the funniest fucking thing.
Yeah. But it's a great call forward. Like, it reminds me that we totally, that we're like straddling these two stories. And he's close enough to be annoyed by Andy, which is, if you're near enough to be aware of Andy, then you're annoyed of him.
Yes.
So
they get across the river. Bix gets him across the river and assures them that he'll be fine, and kind of starts taking the ferry back to his side.
Yeah, they're really worried about whether or not he's going to survive. And he even says, like, hey, on your way back, tell me stories of your journey. He's like, yeah, okay, cool. So yeah, we'll totally call you.
Yeah. I have a feeling that Bix is fine. Like, he's been around for 120 years. Like, I have a feeling that you know, he's all right.
He's been around for 120 years, and he can immediately identify when a Starkblast is coming.
Yeah, like he seems like he was prepared for it when they got there.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't actually worry about Bix.
Yeah.
But
I wish him well. I don't want anything bad to happen to him. I just think he's got to get head on his shoulders.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But so as soon as he's gone, Roland explains what a Starkblast is, which is a winter storm that is so intense that the trees basically explode, sort of.
Right.
They contract inward so suddenly that they explode.
Right. So
the birds flying through the sky freeze in mid-flight, which seems like an exaggeration, but not by necessarily that much.
Right. Like, it just describes, like, it's almost like a wall of a snap freeze that comes along, like in that movie The Day After Tomorrow or something like that. Or 2012. Just pick your disaster flick of choice. But I just love that image of just this coming down over a forest. And, you know, Roland describes it like it sounds like grenades going off by these trees, either cracking or shattering, just, you know, freezing so quickly that they can't maintain their integrity.
Yeah, and there's he talks about just everything freezing, and at one point he says that the grass turns to glass.
Yeah.
Which, like,
yeah,
that seems uncharacteristically poetic for Roland, but also real cool.
Yeah, he's not somebody who generally speaks in flowery imagery, so you can safely take him literally when he describes that, you know, how thorough this freezing is, that even the glass will shatter, the grass will shatter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're going on, and the whole thing with Oi acting strange is that Billy Bumblers can detect when one of these is coming on.
Right. Kind of like how there are all those, I'm going to call them myths, but I don't think they are. But just that knowledge that, like, oh, horses can tell when it's about to rain. You know, you can tell by watching the way they move their tails and stuff. Or cows will seek cover before, or like dogs knowing when earthquakes are going to come. Like, just in general, Throckin or Billy Bumblers are just tuned to when these things are going to come around. And that's kind of why they were cultivated and kept around, A, because they talk and it's like a nice little parlor trick, but B, like they were basically a warding for this terrible disaster so people could start getting things in order.
Yeah. But that leads us to one of the most Roland statements in maybe the entire Dark Tower series.
I forget. What is it?
Jake asks, how do the Bumblers know? And what is it? Roland only shook his head. The how and why of things had never interested him much.
Yep. Yeah, I was listening to this while I was doing dishes, and my hands were too wet for me to like immediately take a note of that.
Yeah. That's just like
it's Roland in a sentence.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So they get to this town. It's called Gook, although it is written out as though it was a slur. I know that it is pronounced Gook because I listened. The audiobook is narrated by Stephen King, so you get the actual pronunciation.
That's good.
Yeah,
I like that. That makes me marginally more comfortable.
Yeah. And we just have like misadventures of them getting ready. Like Susanna gets covered in chimney soot so much that
it's almost in like a slapstick moment. Like
it's like like it'd be part of a montage. Like let's fix up the old rec center so we can throw the car wash to save the rec center. Like her getting covered, her basically having a chimney disaster would be like a comedy beat during that.
Yeah. And she like chimney soot falls down. Detta comes out and just starts swearing, and then Jake walks in and is just wide-eyed and I forget the exact passage, but like says in this tone of utmost respect, like, you know more swears than my dad.
Yeah, you swear.
I didn't think anyone knew more. Yeah, you swear better than my dad. Like, it's great. It's a very fun, charming moment.
But yeah, they're gathering firewood. Always starts going nuts, and they hear the storm approaching. They hear the trees shattering, and there's this real desperate moment as Jake like risks his life going out to save Boy. Like they basically have to form a bit of a human chain to pull him in as the wind starts whipping up, and they barely get the door closed in time.
Yeah.
A little bit like the beginning of Wasteland, or the middle of Wastelands, when they're getting across the bridge, actually.
Yeah, actually. I didn't think about that parallel, but yeah.
But like they're locked in, for a good long while. They have no idea how these things are going to go. So they say, "Hey, Roland, tell us a story." And he says, "Hey, I'm going to tell you. I'll give you two for the price of one. I'm going to give you a story inside a story." And both of them relate to Starkblast and Billy Bumblers, taking us to young Roland times with the section called "The Skin Man, Part 1." Roland's first story takes us back into Gilead. He's gotten back with his buddies. They're still within like the 6-month mourning period after the death of his mom, Gabrielle. And kind of the official story that they're giving everybody is that she was possessed by a demon and basically had to be put down.
Which that is, and he kind of goes on to say that's kind of the rote story anytime anybody takes their own life.
Yes.
It's like, oh, they were possessed by a demon who compelled them to take their own life. And so even though that's not exactly, that doesn't even really exactly fit the situation.
Yeah. It's the demon possession is the fan death of Gilead.
Yeah, that's the official obituary.
Yeah. But yeah, and Roland is kind of doing self-imposed kind of penance, taking care of a now elderly court who has really deteriorated in this version of the story, irrespective of the comics where we see court kind of still kicking around. Roland's trial was court's last.
Yeah, I was surprised by that because I didn't get the impression from Roland's trial that that was the end of court.
Right. Like it took his eye, but
Yeah, I figured that we'd have I figured that court would just be down an eye and still kick everybody's ass.
Right.
But so like that's one of the very few details in the book that I was kind of taken aback by, even though I like the reason for it.
Yeah. It's sad. Like court ruined a bunch of people, but you still don't like to see somebody strong kind of fall to dementia and incontinence. Like Roland is there basically sending the nurses away and like talking to him, even though most of the time Court doesn't know who he is.
Yeah. And he says something about like his father asks how Court is basically. Mm-hmm. And Roland says he has days where he knows me.
Right.
And anybody who's ever had a relative or a loved one with dementia, Alzheimer's, any of that, like, you do know how fast that can take somebody down.
Right.
And you know exactly how just like eviscerating it is to watch.
Yeah.
And so they don't dwell on it. It's not played up for like an emotional beat, but it's there.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I thought that it was handled and that's a topic that kind of hits very close to home for me personally.
Yeah.
And I thought that it was handled very well.
Yeah. And Roland, he feels guilty for doing this. Like, he is doing this at the expense of like participating more in gunslinger duties. Like, his dad even says like, "Oh, did I raise you for the gun just so you could be a nursemaid? You know, like just so you could, take care of somebody. No matter how good this is, like we need you elsewhere." In fact,
so
we
starts out on a down note, but almost immediately gets pretty good.
Because guess what? We got a call, and you've got a job now. We're gonna send you and your buddy Jamie DeCurry off to
Elaine and Cuthbert they've got shit to do here. You and Jamie DeCurry, the only person maybe like more stolid and steadfast than Roland.
Yeah, the only person who is more internal than Roland. Jamie DeCurry, the non-person.
Yeah. There's a part where I don't even remember what Jamie said. He says like a sentence, and it's something to the effect of like, "Man, that was weird." And then it's as though he realized he had been speaking too much. He went quiet.
"I'm very sorry for flying off the handle."
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Exactly that. And also Jamie DeCurry, they refer to him as Jamie Redhand because he's apparently Billy Corgan.
Is that a name for Billy Corgan?
Oh, well, no, but he has the same birthmark as Billy Corgan.
Oh, huh.
If you look up a picture of Billy Corgan, it is slightly upsetting to look at, and depending on how recent the picture is, for several reasons.
Because he's talking about chemtrails in the picture?
Well, ostensibly.
Yeah.
Billy Corgan, if you're listening to this, tweet your frustrations to @BraytonJC.
So the red hand has been kind of Jamie's kind of distinctive characteristic. Basically, anytime he's come up, but he's been thoroughly like a background character, and he's very much kind of a non-presence in the story, except that he has another gunslinger here, a gunslinger who prefers to use his bow or crossbow.
Yeah, and he's mentioned as a member of Roland's ka-tet, but he doesn't really have a parallel in the present day ka-tet. Right. And he doesn't really have what's the word I'm looking for? Personality.
Right.
Like a non-character is the exact right way to put it, which I was disappointed by, but at the same time, like it fits the story. Like I was disappointed, but I really can't fault Stephen King for it.
Yeah, there's not really like room for Cuthbert in this.
No, if it was Cuthbert, maybe if it was Elaine, it would work. Mm-hmm. But this is a Roland story, and having Jamie there, like, it wouldn't make sense if it was just Roland. But having Jamie there, it lets it be a Roland story.
Right. Yeah. So I think that it's also implied that Stephen knows that Roland would rather travel with either Elaine or Cuthbert. But
clearly.
He has
very,
picked
very
Jamie
clearly
because he knows that it would just be better for the job. So the idea is they need to go to this town of Deberia
which is like a mining town that has seen better days, basically.
Right. It's like a really stereotypical, like, declining Western town is the way that it is.
I had a hard time not picturing it as the town where Derek Zoolander's father and brother live.
The Black Lung, Pop.
Yeah, exactly. Like that was just kind of what I was picturing when Steven was setting it up. And like, that's not how it's characterized at all, but the way that he was explaining it, it's like, oh yeah, this is like, that's what this is.
It's like
minus comic relief.
Yeah. It's on the edge of like Alkali Flats, and it is below just kind of this, these rocky crags that are just honeycombed with like salt mines. Like basically the only reason it still exists anymore is because, they found a little bit more salt in that there shaker. So we might as well just kind of keep it propped up. But like everything else in Midworld outside of Gilead, things are just kind of in decline. They're moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
Yeah.
Real quick. Reading this, I had to look up what an alkali flat was.
Oh, yeah.
Because I didn't know. And if you're like me and you don't know what that is, and you were just kind of pretending like, oh, yeah, alkali flats. Yeah, totally. But you didn't have a podcast that you were recording where you had to talk about it. And so you did not go on the internet and look up what it actually is. It's basically a lake that used to exist, except that the area that it was in turned into a desert, and so it dried out. And so it's just like highly, highly concentrated salt from evaporated salt water.
Right. Yeah. Like the Western Utah. Think that. If you're trying to picture an alkali flat.
Yeah. So just, geography facts.
Yeah, it's like not arable land, and also probably not a very pleasant place to live outside of, the boom and bust of the mining, right?
Yeah. Oh, it sounds very bad.
Especially because they got a skin man running around.
Yeah, everything about Deberia sounds bad, and then you throw a fucking, like, were menagerie on top of it.
So skin men, they pop up. There's no real like strict definition, but the idea is that there is a person who is a shapeshifter who can turn into basically all kinds of dangerous animals and will go on these rampages.
And what's very, very interesting, and I love the shit out of like establishing a mythology. And Stephen King does it very, very well. And that was one of my favorite things about Rose Madder,
mm-hmm.
because he just kind of had this. It was a mythology that was based loosely on Greek mythology, but he let you know the entire time that that's not exactly what it was.
Right.
And it was kind of clumsy and kind of clunky. And this is, I feel like, much more. I like this presentation much better.
Right.
But it's like a werewolf or a skinwalker or any other kind of shapeshifter, except that those things exist in myths in Midworld, and this isn't quite any of that.
Right, like they bounce the questions off of like the lawmen in Deberia, saying like, okay, does it happen on full moons? Like, we've heard these stories. That's not the case. Well, is it a wolf? Like sometimes, but like they're just kind of like going through and like. I'm not just making the reference to The Witcher because we just played that for just a couple of months ago. We played that for Watch Out for Fireballs. It really is like the sense of these gunslingers are being brought in for their knowledge of the mystic and also their ability to confront them and solve problems. Because, what they have is something that I love about werewolf stories, which is it is kind of being blended in, like it is living among the populace, and it is a mystery that is built into the story.
And one of my favorite features, and I love this about literally every werewolf story that I've ever enjoyed, and they totally go for this, and they resolve it earlier than I would have preferred. But there's ambiguity as to whether or not the person even knows that they are aware, whatever.
Right.
They don't know. They don't have any way of knowing. Like, maybe this person genuinely has no idea that they are turning into these horrible monsters and killing tens and tens of people regularly.
So even if we shook him down, we couldn't like interrogate him because he wouldn't have any guilt. You can't be guilty about something you didn't know you did.
Yeah, but in fairly short order, like I'm skipping ahead a bit, but no, this motherfucker knows what he did.
Yeah. Like, this is the glee of the hunt.
Yeah. So I don't know how it resolves because I have not read that far yet. But this bastard's a real bastard.
Yeah. Like, so Stephen, Roland's dad, doesn't believe the myth. He thinks that it's somebody who's just kind of like running around doing murders while wearing animal skins.
Yeah, and basically as soon as Roland and Jamie get there, that's obviously not the case because they almost immediately meet someone who has had a run-in with this thing.
Yeah, and a dude wearing skins couldn't do that.
If it's a dude wearing animal skins, then that's a different sort of dude, and that's a whole other sort of problem.
Right.
Because this dude wearing animal skins bit a lady's head off.
Right.
And then ate another lady's half of her face.
Kind of at a go.
Like, tried to bite her head off, but missed and only got half her face instead.
Right.
That's not a dude wearing animal skins, Stephen Deshane. Sorry.
No. Their buddy, their mystic teacher, Van A, thinks, it's totally something along the lines of what they're saying. And Roland believes them.
Yeah, Van A has a sense that this is legit, and Roland's gut tells him to trust Van A, and Roland trusts his gut.
Yeah, well, there's also like trust the facts. Like it would be very difficult for a single person to slaughter a ranch full of 20 people.
Clearly, but also like I'm trying to think of an instance within the Dark Tower where Roland's gut has been wrong.
I just flipped through my Rolodex. I can't. I'm sure there is.
Your Rolandex?
Jesus, no. I specifically didn't say Rolandex.
I told you, man. Dad jokes. I'm working hard all the time. It's a lifestyle. It's not a choice.
So DeBerry is a little bit beyond where Gabrielle did her exile, basically her penance for, cheating on the Din of Gilead. And this starts up like a thing, like everybody warns Roland and Jamie about the women who live there.
Yeah, God, this is one of my favorite things in this book so far too.
Because it's an easy thing. It's like setting up straw men of literal straw men who are just a little bit skeptical or wary of what happens when a bunch of women live together, kind of like without them. Like, Stephen says, oh, they prefer the long stick, which Roland doesn't understand. He has to ask Jamie about it later.
Yeah, which is its own kind of comedy.
Right. Just because he's not, he's not as vulgar. He doesn't understand what dildos and or dildren, depending on your preferred pluralization, what those are.
Is dildren a plural of dildos?
No, that's an old Those Damn Ross Kids joke.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I am not as not as well versed in your podcast history
that's fine.
As you are, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's something my brother said, and it was one of the most amazingly observed, just kind of observed observations about language that I've ever seen. But yeah, the plural of dildo is dildren.
That is very good.
Yeah.
Like that's even better. Like my old roommate referred to them as dildi, which I thought was quite good. Mm-hmm. But dildren is much better.
Yeah, it's it rolls off the tongue better.
It really does. Like I'm honestly like kind of taken with that, which is a weird thing when talking about a dildo.
Yeah. Well, I just take that and use it in the future. Like that's why we put it out there, is because it's really apt. And
I will. Thank you. Thank you, Chris Ross.
Since that day, whenever I talk about more than one dildo, it is always dildren. Like it doesn't come up as often as you would think, but yeah. So.
I don't know how often I would think the plural of dildo
comes up in any given human's life.
See, the trick is sometimes you force it.
Well, from what I know about you, Cole, you would never force a dildo.
I mean, into a conversation.
Let alone more than one.
Right. Just you don't want to be uncouth.
No, clearly, and you are nothing if not a gentleman.
That is one of the least accurate statements I've ever heard.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not like you're a gentleman or you're nothing. Like it's, one of those two.
Yeah.
I like to see the best in people, so I've been assuming some nice things about you, but
thank you.
You know you better than I do. So
yeah. I was just referring to the general filthiness of my mouth more than anything.
See, I just kind of assume all men are garbage.
Yeah. Okay.
Like myself included, for sure.
Right.
But like within that context, you seem like a pretty stand-up piece of garbage.
So, Stephen, he says,
ladies, take note. Yeah. Anyway,
so Stephen says, yeah, they're probably all lesbians. And the engineer of the train that they take out, which everybody calls Sma Toot, which is a great name for anything. I
am constantly annoyed by the abbreviation of small to Sma.
And I don't know why. Maybe I can hear it more clearly.
I don't know why. Like, it just maybe it's like if you listen to the audiobook of this, it very genuinely might not even be a thing for you. But like,
yeah.
I've only read this and like looking at it like SMA' toot, like,
yeah.
And Roland talks about back when he was SMA apostrophe, and like it has, even before I got to Sma Toot, like it has annoyed me.
Yeah.
And it's one of those fantasy linguistic conventions that seems arbitrary and as a result pisses me off. It's the same way that like let's talk about George R.R. Martin, Song of Ice and Fire, Starkblast. Like, oh, the armor was dented. No, it was dented.
What?
It wasn't. George R.R. Martin in A Song of Ice and Fire, in all those books, he replaces the E in dent with an I.
So it's dented.
So it's
like
dented.
instead of like it's like a dent, it is like by dint of will.
Sort of, but
like just I know the word dent, but like that's not.
Yeah, but just dent.
Right.
It's just the word dent, but fantasy dent. It's like, no, it's dented.
It's an actual
Your
word.
Shit is dented.
I did a search. Dent, noun, an impression or hollow in a surface. The soft dents at the top. Huh. Yeah.
No, like it's a word, but like it's not a word that anyone in any world uses. Like,
right. I don't know.
There's already a word that everyone knows, and it's dented.
Seems alien.
Just use it. And that it like sma instead of small, like it hits me in the same way. And it's like, I love everything surrounding it. I genuinely do. And I hate to sound like I'm being a nitpicker about it, but like,
I mean,
the more that I read, the more it pissed me off. And, if anyone else is pissed off about Sma versus small, tweet at Cole Ross on Twitter.
Tweet at Brayton JC.
No. At Cole Ross, let him know he's wrong. Let him know. Vent your anger.
So it definitely it didn't stick out for me.
At Mr._Harder, tag me so that I can see it because I want to know.
Why are you bringing this down on me?
Because I don't actually have a good reason.
No, I
really don't.
So it didn't bother me.
You have literally done nothing to me. You've done nothing bad to me
ever in my entire time of knowing you, Cole. You have been nothing but a positive presence in my life.
Yeah.
If you agree with me, tweet all of your anger at Cole.
Okay.
And tag me so I can see it.
So the gauntlet has been thrown. Yeah. So it definitely isn't as big of as big of an issue for me.
No, it's also not
stuff.
an issue at all within the story. Like right. It is such a minor throwaway point. I am 100% being an asshole by like getting hung up on that.
Even before I listened to the audiobook, just after reading it when it came out, if I saw something that was like, oh, it's like a tiny cute little thing, I would call it a small toot. Like, yeah, it's a small toot. I think the presence of toot in that really helps smooth it over for me. Small
toot. That's adorable.
Small toot. Yeah.
That is like.
But I'm saying small toot.
Well, if you say it like that, then it sounds like small.
Right, but I'm saying it the way it's written. Small toot.
Yeah, but if you read it.
Oh yeah.
If you read it, it's very obnoxious. But if you say small toot.
I generally let things let things play themselves out. I might have to forcibly move us along from this.
No, Cole. No, this far, no further.
So
I'm just kidding. No, this is a ridiculous fucking sticking point.
Yeah. So Steven says, hey, they probably sleep with each other, and the engineer of Small Toot says, like, he makes a point of saying several times over, they eats the men's.
Yes. And that leads us to one of my favorite things. It's just fucking pure poetry. When they're talking to the engineer about Deberia, and he brings up Serenity, which is like the women's conclave, I guess, where Gabrielle did her penance and where Roland and Jamie are ostensibly going to stop first. And it's this conclave of women living by themselves, which clearly is dangerous and scary. But the engineer of the train, the engineer of Small Toot, says the women there eat men, and he makes sure that they know he is not speaking figuratively.
Right. Make sure it is not.
He warns them. He says it's not just a way of speaking, boys. They ... eat ... the men's. They may call you or make promises. They may even show you their titties, as they know a young man can't take their eyes off such. But never mind. Turn your ears from their promises and your eyes from their titties. I was reading this on my lunch break at work, and I started laughing so hard that I had to leave the lunchroom.
Lest you have to explain what it is you're laughing at?
Yes. And then I convinced myself it wasn't that funny and went back and read it again. And it absolutely was that funny. And so I highlighted it to talk about. And my note in my Kindle, my footnote is, read this twice. It's that funny.
So, and their reaction to this as well. Like there are a couple of points where somebody just says something fucking ghastly, and the diplomats in Roland and Jamie are just like, roll eyes. That's funny, huh? Yeah. Okay. Well.
Yeah. Like Roland and Jamie are so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's like they are exactly as uncomfortable as I feel like any normal human would be, which is great.
The delivery in the audiobook, again, it's written by Stephen King. Like there's a little bit of like, whenever there is something kind of questionable that an author writes, and I think King gets this a lot because he's not afraid of, depicting somebody who has a streak of despicableness to them. His delivery on these lines is really amazing. Specifically, the oft repeated refrain of "They eat the men." So they get to Serenity, and they find out very quickly that it is not It is not nowhere near as bad as they think. There's a little bit of context, like the train derailed. Like that's why they stopped outside of town, and they ended up walking into this den of people whose promises they should turn their ears from, and titties they should turn their eyes from, and say, like, oh, they meet this kind of the head sister of this, Sister Everlyn, who was a massive woman, but very impressive and very gregarious. Brings them in. It's kind of like, hey, yeah, like, let's talk about this. But she has an interest, because she takes them and says, like, hey, if you're here to stop the Skin Man, well, we were one of the places that they attacked. Let me show you Fortuna, who's this young woman with a disfigured face. The Skin Man came in, attacked Serenity, killed a nun named Dolores. Basically popped her top like she was a Pringles can, and he was about ready to open up another one.
Popped her top is like the most family friendly euphemism for decapitation I've ever heard.
So I was trying to think, like, oh, he cracks into her like a cold one, but you don't like bite into. We also don't bite into the top of a Pringles can. No, like he picks her up and he like just he takes a bite out of her like she was the top part of a candy bar that he didn't like.
You're absolutely right. Like that absolutely conveys what happens. I'm just saying, well done. Like that is a ghastly situation, and you have supplied a very approachable euphemism.
I can go classy too. I could say, you ever seen the painting Saturn Devours His Children? It's kind of like that. But Fortuna, like her face is mostly covered in bandages. Her nose is gone. They say, oh, her nose is just a bloody channel at this point. She wishes that she had died. And far from being purely comforting, like Everlyn says, hey, that's blasphemy. You're gonna need to do extra God exercises to work that off. I don't know the actual term that she uses. Extra prayers or whatnot.
That sounds right.
Yeah. take a God lap. But yeah, like Everlyn only managed to save Fortuna because she had a blunderbuss. Basically it was loaded up like that shotgun lamp from the Great Outdoors. They had no idea if it would even fire, but got rid of it. So she says, hey, you need to go and solve this, but also when you're done, I need you to come back because I have something for you, Roland, from your mom. Not going to give it to you now because I'm really interested in you finishing this job. So they have a bit more of like a dossier. Like they know that the Skin Man can change it into different animals. And they talk about this on their road before they get to Debaria itself, which is this kind of stereotypical Western town. You've got John Voight running around with Vince Vaughn. They've got Black Lung. Or is it Martin Sheen? Is it Martin Sheen in Zoolander? Who plays the dad?
Well, it's Martin Sheen that plays the dad, but they both, I want to say everybody has Black Lung.
Okay. I forget who played Derek Zoolander's
I'm
dad.
going to be very honest. I have not watched Zoolander in a long time.
It was just funny because like in the movie, like the joke is, now the joke in Zoolander is, no, I'm not good. So they meet they meet the sheriff. Who's this big old white-haired man who kind of sounds like Santa Claus. Name's Hugh Peavy. And he's real bummed out that Stephen himself isn't here. That he sent off for the hero for the Descendant of Eld, and all I got was these two meddling kids.
Yeah, Hugh Peavy. He had a run-in or an experience with Stephen Deshane when he was younger.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and that kind of like shaped his entire career.
Yeah, because he was like a teenager or something when Stephen Deshane came around. They went and took out the Crow Gang, and they were the only two survivors because Stephen Deshane had the good sense not to go charging right into their front door. Stephen took a bullet in the altercation, so Peavy took out his knife, pried out the slug. Stephen kept it, and actually he sent it back with Roland to give back to Peavy as kind of a reminder, like, yes, this is the you should trust this person, you should trust my son, to deal with this. And it's a cool story. Like, it's a couple pages long, but it is like a good Western story of like rounding up a posse and outsmarting a group of bandits.
Yeah. And like, he's so stoked about it that you can't help but get caught up. Like, it's great. It's I'm not like by any means like an aficionado for like westerns or that entire like cultural media movement, but like you can't help but get caught up in just like how badass Stephen Deshane is and how much this guy wants to do right by him, and you want to root for this guy, and it's like, oh, like it's not Stephen Deshane, but it's his son, and like he's trying real hard to be a hard ass, but not too much of a hard ass, and to like trust him, but also show like it's great. Like this is Stephen King's characterization, like on point.
Yeah, and we get very few opportunities to hear about the exploits of Stephen Deshane.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so you have to kind of like treasure each and every one of them. Yeah, I want to know more about the Crow Gang, but I think I know enough about the Crow Gang. So Peavy takes them over to Mission Control, which is a wall and a piece of chalk. And he draws up a map of Deberia saying, hey, here are the places where the Skin Man has attacked. He puts up X's. And this is where they talk over like a couple of the options of the ways this could shake out. Does it respond to the moon? No. Is it a wolf? Sometimes, like we said. Peavy thinks that the Skin Man is a creature from the deep cracks, which is an amazing sentence. I like that quite a bit. And also, makes sense, like the deep cracks like we saw over the wastelands, as they were powering over it in Blaine. The idea that like, oh, it's probably like a toad ash monster from Athene. Roland thinks that maybe it is a person who dug up an artifact.
Yeah, which immediately, like upon reading that, I'm like, oh, I hope that's what it is.
See, the thing is, I forget what it is. I forget if that is the explanation, and that if it is, that might explain why I put desperation right before this, because that is completely the story of desperation.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
I guess that's fair.
Yeah, I forget why I put desperation here, so I really hope that turns out to be the case, and that wasn't just me like doing a placeholder thing and then not fixing it. So he takes the boys, says like, "Hey, there are no hotels here." He laughs at them for thinking that there would be a place to sleep, and it turns out they have to spend their entire time here in the drunk tank, because why not?
Yeah, I mean, like if you're an elite law enforcement agent and you're going to rescue a town, if they put you up in the drunk tank, I can't imagine you'd complain, right?
It puts you right near the action. It puts you near the Jing Jang.
Yeah, you're right by the Jing Jang.
Yeah, and it is so treasured by the sheriff's department. They have a note up and everything. They use paper to say, "Hey, don't touch this without permission." They misspelled permission as permission.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. They have a telephone. It used to go to Gilead, but it doesn't anymore. Oh man, I just had a flash here. Nick Andros sleeps in the drunk tank in The Stand when he first gets to Shoyo. Yeah.
Oh, he does.
I like that. It's not like everything has to be a callback to everything, but that's totally the case. So late at night, while they're sleeping in the cell, the Jing Jang starts ringing. Turns out the Skin Man has struck. He's up at the old Jefferson Ranch. And the way that they describe what the Skin Man has done to this place is they've turned it into an abattoir.
Which is the most gentle description that we get.
It's pretty horrifying. The only way it would be scarier is if you saw some of this happen in practice. But coming to it, like, there are parts of it that are even glossed over to say, like, yeah, that part was just all blood.
Yeah. There are, I mean, like, this is a video game podcast network. You guys know what I'm talking about when I say NPCs. There are NPCs in the story who are just like, oh, you want to know about that? Nope, it was bad.
Yeah, like that. I mean, they call up these gunslingers, but there are also like local people who are around just trying to figure this out. I think all told it's like 20 dead, and the way that it's said, like the way that it's put it, like, oh, the butcher bill came to about 20.
Yeah. Like nobody even knows how to handle this shit. Like
right.
It's that bad. And like Roland and Jamie don't know how to handle it.
No, they're kids. Like they've seen a bunch. Like they, like Roland saw active combat.
They get there and like Roland has seen some fucking shit at this point.
Yeah.
And they get there and he's like, I've never seen anything like this. And he looks at Jamie and his first thought is like, fuck, I hope Jamie doesn't pass out.
Yep.
Like, it's that bad. It's so bad. Even by Stephen King fan standards, his description is upsetting.
Yeah. And it gives you a little bit of a sense like, oh, this isn't just PV being shitty about kids or not understanding, that even a young gunslinger can be effective. No, he just knows kind of the gravity of the situation. Like he knows what they're up against because he has seen, roughly every 2 weeks, another one of these. And he's kind of sick and tired of it. But yeah, everybody's dead, completely snarling. The person who called, like, all that he heard was roaring and gunshots. I love this scene, that they're following the tracks that start out, I think as like a bear, like an 800-pound bear or whatever. They're following the tracks and they just see as they slowly morph into they're hooved. So they turn into a bull here. Oh, wait a minute. Wait, now here's barefoot human. Now here's cats as he's jumping over stuff. Like he doesn't just pick a transformation for a night and go about his business. He is like shifting depending on what is appropriate for what he's doing.
Yeah.
And they see it in just one line of footprints. That is a very cool visual idea.
Yeah, which and it continues, and it's something that in a weird sort of way sticks with you.
But the footprints, they lead to an abandoned stable where they find a fresh pile of horse shit, described as horse apples. Which is one of my favorite ways of saying
described as horse apples, and then literally 2 paragraphs later described as horse shit.
Just in case you were unclear.
Which I love that because like horse apple, like I feel like horse apples is a common enough thing. Everybody knows it,
right?
But Stephen King is like, nope, yeah, I know, but it's horse shit. Let's not split hair.
Well, I mean, like any good editor will make you not use the same word too much in the same the same run of text, right?
Yeah,
you got to vary it up. That way you don't hit the same note every time. But like this gives them enough information. So yes, the person we're dealing with, he knows what he is doing. This is not somebody who transformed while he was sleeping and made a tear. This is somebody who rode a horse to this ranch intending to target it, transformed, did what he needed to do, came back here and ran away. And also it's pretty clear from what they see here that it's a salty. It's one of the salt miners.
Yeah.
So as they're going to leave, they see this big pile of abandoned old tack. They see it shift and there's a boy inside. He was spontaneously generated. And this is Bill Streeter, the son of one of the cooks at the ranch, who has hidden for his life.
And like as soon as they meet him that his dad's dead.
Oh, well, because everybody else at the ranch is dead.
Yeah, you don't know who his dad is, but he's dead, and that sucks.
And he's terrified. Like he just wants a straight answer. Nobody wants to give it to him. Roland, despite all the stuff that he's seen, he's still a kid. He's not ready to break this kind of bad news to a small child, to a small child that he's just met. So he actually leaves. He leaves it to Sheriff Peavy to say this. It's to say like, you're welcome to the world of being an orphan. Hi. Yeah, it's
like, which is I guess the best you can hope for.
I mean, it's the sheriff. Like, there are probably a lot of times where a police person has broken that news, and all of a sudden I'm way too bummed out by the ideas that I'm entertaining about small children being left alone in the world. But Bill Streeter, the kind of the stock standard little boy with gumption. He manages to hide, and they have to figure out what to do with him. Like they end up taking him back to the jail, to keep him around. He was too scared when he saw what happened to really have any details to be able to relate anything of any real value beyond just it was scary and I ran. But Roland has a trick up his sleeve. They put together a plan. Roland, as pragmatic as ever, decides, hey, we can use Bill as bait. If it is broadcast loudly to the entire village, to all the Salties, that there is a survivor who saw something that may get the person to reveal themselves, we're gonna keep Bill in the jail, keep an eye on him. In the meantime, we're going to interview every single Salty. And Roland, in order to get more information, decides to use his bullet trick to hypnotize Bill to learn more.
So Roland ultimately does use his bullet trick to hypnotize Bill, but does he set out intending to do that? Because it kind of seems like he has the idea, but then decides against it, and then Jamie kind of talks him into it.
He didn't want PV to know that was something he could do because it is not something reliable. Jamie knows that Roland can do this because Roland has done it before, and he notably did it with Susan. But Roland says Susan wanted to tell us stuff. She just couldn't pull it up. So if they told PV that if they could do this, then it would be overpromising, then it would create more problems. He decided to take it and do it in private, so that way there wasn't the weight of expectation, and if it failed, then whatever, shrug, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And it's a process, because, he's remembering things that he himself blocked out. The process of, hypnotizing is taking this person back and making them relive it. And the way you keep them down is saying oh, I'm here. I've got my guns. I'm here to protect you. Just tell me what you see. And he keeps fighting it. But ultimately, turns out he didn't see much. He did see two things about the person who did this. When he was hiding, when this person hopped back on his horse, he saw that he had a blue band around his ankle. They determined it's a tattoo. And also there was a white mark, but the white mark is kind of glossed over.
Yeah.
So they've got that. And Roland, he's riding kind of high on this. He's thinking, okay, blue bands, why not? We've got this. I'm going to go have a blacksmith make some special bullets, and oh, wait, turns out that's the mark of people who were condemned to death at the stockade. Oh, pretty much exclusively criminals work at the salt mines. So we didn't take it from 200 down to 1. We took it from 200 down to 185.
Yeah. Which is better, but not great.
Yeah. And he almost he notices the sheriff laugh when he breaks the news, and he almost breaks his jaw. It's a real moment of the wind being taken out of Roland's sails. So, upsy daisy, and we're kind of left on the eve of this big day of starting the interrogations. And Roland is stuck with a kid. It's him and Jamie, and they're in the jail, and Bill is restless. Obviously, you would be, and says, "Hey, will you tell me a story? Just to pass the time, help me go to sleep." And after some hemming and hawing, Roland decides to tell the story that he's reminded of. Thinking of these shapeshifters and such, and prepares to tell the Wind Through the Keyhole, the story of Tim Stoutheart, of his dad Big Ross, and his mom Nell, on the edge of the endless forest. That is a setup that is incredibly intriguing to me, not just because it has my own name in it, but that is also where we're going to stop, on the edge of this fairy tale, where we learn not just about what Midworld once was, but we learn the stories that Midworld tells about itself.
Yeah, it's so hard not to keep reading.
Do it. We're the clock's a ticking.
I'm literally, as soon as we get off this call, as soon as we are done recording, I'm going to keep reading. Make no mistake. That is my plans for the rest of the evening.
You're going to enjoy it. It's good. We're going to get some, I don't want to spoil too much, we're going to get some primo Randal Flagg content in this.
Interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, that's where we're going to go. If you're reading along, there's no strict chapter marker that we're going to hit. We're going to stop the next episode after Tim gets his gun.
Got it.
Yep.
Cool.
Cool. Well, thank you everybody for listening to this. Evan, thank you so much for coming on and talking about.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. I'm happy you're enjoying this. I
love this. I absolutely love it. I'm gonna keep doing Radio Free Midworld until you agree to do a reboot fan cast with me. That is my long game. I'm not letting that go. I'm 100% serious.
Yeah. Let's look at it after this show ends.
Nope. You need to commit right now.
No, but you just said if I say yes to that, then you're not going to do this show anymore. And I like having you on here.
Definitely didn't say that. I'm going to keep doing this show. I'm going to keep reading these fucking books. Like let's be real. I'm not going to stop reading The Dark Tower.
Where can people find you on the internet outside of these shows?
People can find me at Mr_Harder, all spelled out, on Twitter. I'm like, if you're on Facebook, you can probably look me up, but I don't really do anything that interesting on Facebook. And if you need anything written for you, that's a thing that I do. So drop me a line. Right now, it's www.evanjonesthorne.com is my portfolio and my contact info. So I'd love to hear from you if I can do anything for you.
Cool. Yeah. You can find me. I'm on Twitter at Cole Ross. That's KOLEROSS. No relation to Tim or Big Ross. Please, Big Ross is my father. I'm Medium Ross. Anyway, that was a dumb joke.
Cole is at Medium Ross on Twitter.
Yep, I'm Medium Ross.
God, if nobody has that, you have to lock that down. You realize that, right?
Yep. Medium Ross in a medium
beautiful.
Place.
It's so good.
You can
if you aren't already, you need to go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. I've been a patron for like 3 or 4 years at this point. I always make sure that I give to Duckfeed because the people that make up the Duckfeed network are fucking incredible and they work so hard and the content that they make is so much fun, and anything that I can give and anything that you can give helps them make that happen. So
thank you. Yeah, you made a much more effective plea than I ever could. And like, it's important to me. Like I no longer have a day job. Like this is a major part of the way that I support myself. This show and, a bunch of others that are of a similar vein. And you can check those out. Like even if you don't give, like let's say like 95% of the content it is available to you just by going to Duckfeed.tv and checking out the shows and stuff. Yeah. So with all of that, I want to let's draw this to a close. Thank you so much for listening. Tune in 2 weeks for the rest of but for a continuation of the Wind Through the Keyhole. And until then, long days and pleasant nights.
Thank you, Si.